My mother told me someday I will buy galley with good oars, sail to distant shores.
Hello there everyone, I hope you are all doing well inshallah. This video is a continuation to your lecture series in literature dealing with the Anglo-Saxon literary tradition. In this video in particular, I'll be trying to help you analyze, understand, and contextualize two major poems from the Old English literary era, namely the Seafarer and the Wife's Lament. Starting with your first poem, The Seafarer, what I want you to do is to try and follow with me, line by line, passage by passage, in order to be able to better comprehend. The Seafarer. This tale is true and mine. It tells how the sea took me, swept me back and forth in sorrow and fear and pain, showed me suffering in 100 ships, in 1,000 ports, and in me. It tells of smashing surf when I sweated in the cold of an anxious watch, perched in the bow of the quiet fairness, on the quiet fairness of earth can feel, how wretched I was, drifting through winter on an ice-cold sea, walled in sorrow, alone in a world blown clear of love. But there isn't a man on earth so proud, so born to greatness, so bold with his youth, grown so brave or so graced by God, that he feels no fear as the sails unfurl, wondering what fate has willed and will do. No harp string in his heart, no rewards, no passion for women, no worldly pleasures, nothing, only the ocean's heave. Thus the joys of God are fervent with life where life itself fades quickly into the earth. The wealth of the world neither reaches to heaven nor remains. No man has ever faced the dawn, certain which of fate 3 threats would fall: illness, or age, or an enemy's sword, snatching the life from his soul. The days are gone, when the kingdoms of earth flourished in glory. Now there are no rulers, no emperors, no givers of gold, as once they were. The world's honor ages and shrinks, bent like the man who molded it. Their faces blanch as time advances, their beards whiter, wither, and they mourn the memory of friends. The sons of princes, sown in the dust, the soul stripped of its flesh knows nothing of sweetness or sour, feels no pain. We all fear God. He turned the earth, He set it swinging firmly in space, gave life to the world and light to the sky. Death leaps at the fools who forget their God. He who lives humbly has angels from heaven to carry him courage and strength and belief. And God, mightier than any man's mind, our thoughts should turn to where our home is. Consider the ways of coming there, then strive for sure permission for us to rise to that eternal joy, that life born in the love of God and the hope of heaven. Praise the holy grace of Him who honored us, eternal and changing Creator over the earth. Amen. The theme of the poem depicts a story of a man who is lamenting at sea, lonely and alone. Of course, it can be seen as an autobiography because the speaker or the reciter of the poem is referring to himself. So we have here the first person point of view. The poem could be somehow difficult to comprehend at first, but once you read it one more time, you can start to contextualize its meanings. The Seafarer is a poem of an anonymous scribe or poet. It was found in the Exeter Book. The Exeter Book is an anthology of poems and prose writing that was found or maybe written in 900 AD. The story of a seafarer depicts an Anglo-Saxon way of life. If you try to understand the social, economic, historical, and political backgrounds related to the Anglo-Saxons and try to relate the video that I have presented concerning the historical and social context of the Anglo-Saxon era, you would be able to a great extent understand the theme of the poem. This tale is true and mine. It tells how the sea took me, swept me back and forth in sorrow and fear and pain, showed me suffering in 100 ships, in 1,000 ports, and in me. It tells of smashing surf when I sweated in the cold of an anxious watch, perched in the bow on the quiet fairness of earth can feel, how wretched I was, drifting through winter on an ice-cold sea, whirled in sorrow, alone in a world blown clear of love. The poet is trying to convince us that the story is true. It is not fiction that was created for pleasure or to pass the time. It means that he is really sharing with us his true feelings and past experiences. He is also transferring us back in time to share his feelings, emotions of cold and pain, where we can feel through the sad tone this poem represented that the poet is longing for something and he is regretting something. Throughout this first passage, he uses verbs in the past simple, in the past tense, similar to took, showed, perched, swept, describing in this regard how an Anglo-Saxon life would have been dangerous to live and how threatening it might have been. Anglo-Saxon warriors and seafarers were obliged to respect the code of honor of traveling for the tribe and with the tribe and sacrificing their lives for the kings. Life then was smashing. It was a smashing surf, a depriving reality from your loved ones and from the stability of living. Life was cold, similar to the waters of the sea. It was sad and lonely, similar to the atmosphere of the sea. The poet was deprived of emotions, deprived of affections, because spending a long period of time at sea would only feed on one's energy, and it would make them realize that they are in a cold, stiff world, clear of love, emotions, affections, and that kind of warmth that love brings will, unfortunately, freeze. But there isn't a man on earth so proud, so born to greatness, so bold with his youth, grown so brave or so graced by God, that he feels no fear as he sails unfurled, as the sails unfurl, wondering what fate has willed and will do. No harps ring in his heart, no rewards, no passions for women, no worldly pleasures, nothing, only the ocean's heave. Here the seafarer is admitting reality. We have the second line starting with the word but. But here draws a kind of discrepancy, a kind of difference between passage number 1 and this passage, as if the seafarer starts by lamenting and complaining about how life has been treating him unfairly, and then he is accepting his fate, his destiny, his weird, and he is admitting his weakness, and he now believes that he was born by greater power and he was born weak, and that even he was once considered strong and mighty, he surely would, similar to any man or human being, fear the future, fear what will be awaiting him when he enrolls the sails to sail at sea. He will be, of course, wondering his fate and what will happen to him, and he will be afraid to the extent that he will never think of anything. No music in his heart, no worldly pleasures, no rewards or gifts, no women, nothing, just the sound of the waves and the sea, and the scary quietness that will lead him and drive him to an unknown destiny. Thus, the joys of God are fervent with life, where life itself fades quickly into the earth. The wealth of the world neither reaches to heaven nor remains. No man has ever faced the dawn, certain which of fate's 3 threads would fall, illness or age, or an enemy's sword, snatching the life from his soul. The days are gone when the kingdoms of earth flourished into glory. Now there are no rulers, no emperors, no givers of gold, as once they were. Here the poet is concluding after recalling his past life at sea. He remembers the joys of God and the pleasure. So happiness, according to him, which life represents, is actually in God's satisfaction. Life is fading and dissolving because it is physical, and it will, similar to man, come back to its original dusty nature. Nothing will last, nor will it be transformed with us once we all die, because material life is not important as it tarnishes, similar to the human being. According to the poet, death is near. We need to really consider this. He is describing his condition as an old man, perhaps. His life is and was never certain, because it can end at any moment. Anyone has a short life that can either end by ailing, aging, or by being suddenly killed in the battlefield or at sea. The life of an Anglo-Saxon in this regard was perplexed because of their instability in traveling and fighting to protect their land, their tribes, and their families. So by the end of life, when feeling lonely and alone, this seafarer commences displaying his own life, and maybe how extravagant it may have been. Now he reconsiders heaven and earth, and draws the dialectic and the opposition between worldly and heavenly, between inner and outer, and between a perishing and an everlasting pleasure. The poet draws out our attention to the more mortal versus immortal, to the material versus the spiritual, to the pagan versus the sacred. He now understands that gold givings and wealth collecting, which was an Anglo-Saxon tradition and an Old English style of life, proves trivial when compared to God's heavenly divine pleasure. No one would remain, no matter how strong or influential, and nothing would last, no matter how precious or enduring. The world's honor ages and shrinks, bent like the men who mold it, their faces blanch as time advances, their beards wither and they mourn the memory of friends. The sons of princes, sown in the dust, the soul stripped of its flesh, knows nothing of sweetness or sour, feels no pain. The poet emphasizes the importance of considering life and taking advantage of good experiences and of life itself and of age, because once someone ages, he or she would start to reconsider how did they spend their lives and how will it end for them. They will start to both think of what has been preceded and what's coming. It's a kind of dilemma for the seafarer and for us all, because in the middle of the cold waters, he is now regretting his life. So he is, on the other hand, lamenting, on the one hand, lamenting his life, his youth, his power and strength, and on the other hand, offering advice to the ones reading this poem. It is like a warning to us to try and pay more attention to the way we spend our lives. The way you are living your life would be significant once you grow older, when your face shrinks and blanches, and when your beard whitens, when your friends are gone and your family members are away from you, you will understand the blessing of time and how did you decide to spend it during your lifetime. In the middle of the sea, the seafarer is considering himself a modest, normal human being, because he is even considering that the sons of princes will die and they will sow in the dust, and their flesh and soul will detach. The soul will die. It will lose connection to the world, of its pleasures, its sweetness, and its pain. It will lose the feeling of life. It is, of course, something that can be understood here from its literal meaning or metaphorical meaning, as if the seafarer is telling us that now that he is at sea, cold and hungry and wet, he feels dead, because his soul is also stripped of its flesh. He cannot feel a thing. Everything that is material is needless and useless and worthless, because everything will eventually fades and ends, similar to the way his life has ended. We all fear God. He turns the earth, he set it swinging firmly in space, gave life to the world and light to the sky. Death leaps at the fools who forget their God. He who lives humbly has angels from heaven to carry him, courage and strength and belief, and God mightier than any man's mind. Our thoughts should turn to where our home is. Consider the ways of coming there, then strive for sure permission for us to rise to that eternal joy, that life born in the love of God and the hope of heaven. Praise the holy grace of him who honored us, eternal and changing creator of earth. Amen. So the last passage concludes the essence of life. The seafarer realizes that his joys, pleasures, and happiness lies eventually in pleasing God, and the great success of man and triumph would be against his materialistic side of things. Because winning on the day of judgment, God's pleasure, joy, and heaven is what the seafarer is hoping. The seafarer mentions God, his Lord, from a secular point of view, a scientific perspective, where he celebrates the way God, Almighty, created the heavens and the earth. He speaks of the way the earth swings firmly in space, and the way light and darkness of the sky are bestowed one upon the other. He speaks of the way God is strong and all-powerful, and confirms that the pagan ones, who are denying God's power and control over his slaves and the entire earth, should be cursed and deserves death, because he is a fool. The one who denies God is a fool. So denying God for your entire life would be foolish. And man has to always remember his humble birth and the way God has created him from nothing to become something in life. So this life that God has given any one of us has to be redirected towards a greater goal, that is, pleasing God. The seafarer strengthens his beliefs in the Lord, the Almighty, by considering that he is a believer and he will always be. He knows that God is capable of everything. He is the one who created him and created us all. And he is the one who can forgive him. Because he is the mightier. And in that regard, man should start and sincerely ask himself about his right to his home, which is heaven, the heaven, and strive and praise to God that he will be forgiven and accepted and permitted to meet the heavenly joys and pleasures, because that is the eternal joy. So everything that is material, gold, friends, family members, women, are only fading earthly pleasures. But heaven is eternal. He is hoping to enter heaven and see heaven. And he is trying to comfort himself and us with him, that God would praise the ones who really glorify and honor him. Because God is the eternal and changing creator of the earth. He is praying to this eternal creator to forgive and forget our mistakes. The Seafarer as a poem reflects upon an economic and a social reality. It describes the life of a Norseman or an Anglo-Saxon in general. A man spending his life at sea, battling the waves. This characterizes and summarizes a life of a Germanic warrior. There is a kind of contradiction here between the pagan culture and the religious culture. It is obvious as the Seafarer starts speaking about his past glories and the way he spent his youth traveling and collecting bounties. But he eventually comes into the conclusion that everything ends and fades, and God is the only one remaining. So the binarity between material and immaterial turns man between physical and spiritual. By the coming of Christianity, the pagan physical culture was eclipsed, because living life according to God's commands was at the time of a higher importance. It was really focal to start considering God as the eternal and the only reality. The Seafarer is then advising people of how to choose right and live properly for a greater goal. He is sad, however, because he is alone at sea. As a man bound to a commutatus, solitary living for any Anglo-Saxon or Germanic warrior was never an option. He needs to be contained, and he needs to feel welcome again in his tribe. Here, exile makes him suffer, as he is unable to stay away from his family and his kinsmen. Yet, he knows that he is dying, and he is collapsing. He admits that to God we will all return. Now with your second poem, The Wife's Lament. I make this song about me full sadly, my own wayfaring. I, a woman, tell what griefs I had since I grew up, new or old, never more than now. Ever I know the dark of my exile. First, my Lord went out away from his people, over the wave tumult. I grieved each dawn, wondered where my Lord, my first on earth, might be. Then I went forth a friendless exile to seek a service in my sorrow's need. My man's kinsmen began to plot by darkened thought to divide us two. So we most widely in the world's kingdom lived wretchedly, and I suffered longing. My Lord commanded me to move my dwelling here. I had few loved ones in this land, or faithful friends. For this my heart grieves, that I should find the man wed much to me, hard of fortune, mournful of mind, hide in his mood thinking of murder. Blithe was our bearing, often we vowed that but death alone would part us two, naught else. But this is turned round now, as if it never were our friendship. I must far and near bear the anger of my beloved. The man sent me out to live in the woods, under an oak tree in this den in the earth. Ancient this earth hall, I am all longing. The valleys are dark, the hills high, the yard overgrown bitter with briars. A joyless dwelling. Full oft the like of my Lord seizes me cruelly here. Friends there are on earth, living beloved lain in bed, while I at dawn am walking alone under the oak tree through these earth halls. There I may sit the summer long day, there I can weep over my exile, my many hardships. Hence I may not rest from this care of heart which belongs to me ever, nor all this longing that has caught me in this life. May that young man be sad-minded always, hard his heart thought, while he must wear blithe bearing, with care in the breast, a crowd of sorrows, on himself depend all his world's joy. Be he outlawed far in a strange folk land, that my beloved sits under a rocky cliff, rimed with frost. A lord dreary in spirit, drenched with water in a ruined hall, my Lord endures much care of mind. He remembers too often a happier dwelling. Woe be to them that for a loved one must wait in longing. I make this song about me full sadly, my own wayfaring. I, a woman, tell what griefs I had since I grew up, new or old, never more than now. Ever I know the dark of my exile. First my Lord went out, away from his people, over the wave tumult. I grieved each dawn, wondered where my Lord, my first on earth, might be. Then I went forth a friendless exile to seek service in my sorrow's need. The poem commences as a song. It is similar to the first poem, representing an elegiac tone when sadness and grief prove prevailing. The female starts by describing a story about her pain and sorrow from the time she was growing up to the time she is reciting this poem. The lamenting aspect in this poem, then, is shown openly as she explicitly expresses the reasons behind these feelings. She is missing her husband, who has been lost at sea amidst the noisy, agitating sea waves. And then because she has been exiled to a strange, different place where she feels more lonely. Exile here connotates a real physical meaning and an emotional, spiritual one. Here the poem pinpoints both metaphoric and literal meanings. For example, in her way of quoting the Bible, this female entails a sort of opposition between herself and Prophet Adam, peace be upon him, when longing for company. In the line, I grieved each dawn, wondered where my Lord, my first on earth, might be. She compares and contrasts herself as a female on earth, where the woods is gloomier, darker, and scarier, to Prophet Adam in the Garden of Eden in heaven, where everything was beautiful, authentic, and fulfilling. Here, she contradicts the setting and gender, but mutualizes the inner need and yearning for love and care. Here, she refers to Prophet Adam and his need for a female to feel familiarized with, as if this wife is saying that in spite of Adam having all that beauty and completeness in heaven, company for him was needed. She is justifying her longing for her husband, and especially in that kind of friendless exile. My man's kinsmen began to plot by darkened cloud to divide us two. So we most widely in the world's kingdom lived wretchedly, and I suffered longing. My Lord commanded me to move my dwelling here. I had few loved ones in this land or faithful friends. For this my heart grieves, that I should find the man well matched to me, hard of fortune, mournful of mind, hide in his mood thinking of murder. Blithe was our bearing, often we vowed that but death alone would part us two, not else. But this is turned round now, as if it never were our friendship. I must far and near bear the anger of my beloved. The passage interprets the grief more deeply, as this wife is both abandoned by her husband and wronged by his kinsmen. Maybe they don't want her around because they think that she is not fit for their son, and that's why they wish her to go and seek livelihood elsewhere. She describes life as being dividing and this world as being unjust, because it made two lovers suffer separation. She is very honest in describing her feelings. Mourning elegies in general tend to be recited in a desolate forest or sea. She is then pouring her love out as she is lamenting in pain. She is deceived by her husband, or so she believes, as he has promised her to take care of her and vowed to stay and love her forever. Now that she is suffering alone, she is reconsidering her decision of marrying this man. She is obedient, however, to him, ordering her to change her tribe and live with his family members whom they hate her. She is sad as she knows no one in this new tribe. She is both estranged to this lawful, loving, long-gone husband and to the ones around her as well. She realizes that life changes you, and one changes from one condition to another in a blink of an eye. She is perplexed. She has confused feelings about the way she feels about him, because he has sworn to her to love and protect her always, and only death could do them apart. She is now considering that nothing is certain of anyone and of anything. But here, as a conjunction, indicates that kind of contrasting emotions. And even the lovely moments with her husband vanished for her into thin air, and they only exist in her memory. She is forced to accept her weird, to live in longing, to keep waiting in anger of her current life, and fear of her future, contemplating at the same time the past and mourning along about a lost husband. The man sent me out to live in the woods, under no oak tree in this den in the earth, ancient this earth hall. I am all longing. The valleys are dark, the hills high, the yard overgrown, bitter with briars, a joyless dwelling. Full oft the luck of my Lord seizeth me cruelly here. Friends there are on earth, living beloved, lain in bed, while I, at dawn, am walking alone, under the oak tree through these earth halls. There I may sit the summer long day, there I can weep over my exile, my many hardships. Hence I may not rest from this care of heart which belongs to me ever, nor all this longing that has caught me in this life. She is once again accentuating her confusion about her relationship with her husband, because she is unable to figure out a solution for herself. She refers to him now as the man, just a man. She is depicting the way she's been treated. She has been sent to live in a den, and this made her more longing as she feels more lonely. Exile makes her feel yearning for consideration and care. She feels estranged from everyone. Her spirit is darkened and projected into the surroundings around her. Everything looks gloomy, dim, dull, melancholic. She is sorrowful and bitter about life. Sometimes she complains about the nature of habitation she is forced to dwell in, but other times she can be fulfilled if only her husband, her Lord, her master would be next to her, because without him, everything and every place is a joyless dwelling. Here we understand that she is in need of attachment, of love. She even starts envying her friends being together. She is reflecting upon the inner pain causing her sadness, as well as the external factors making her suffer. She is obliged, however, to bear the pain and anger. She can never forget her husband, in spite of him forgetting her. The longing will never end, and the love towards him will never subside. May that young man be sad-minded always, hard to his hard thoughts, while he must wear a blithe bearing, with care in the breast, a crowd of sorrows. On himself depend all his world's joy. Be he outlawed, far in a strange folk land, that may be loved sits under a rocky cliff, rimed with frost, a lord dreary in spirit, drenched with water, in a ruined hall. My lord endures much care of mind. He remembers too often a happier dwelling. Woe be to them that for a loved one must wait in longing. Because she is angry, sad, and unable to bear the pain no more, she is making a wish. She wants this man, this beloved, this lord and master, to suffer because he made her suffer. So she wants him to feel the same pain, feel the loneliness, the bitterness of exile, and how it would be difficult to live in a strange land, similar to an outlawed, an out-of-law person. Maybe she believes that he is living happy, that's why she is wishing him the opposite. She is wishing that he will always be having a breast crowded with sorrows. She wishes that he will, in the midst of cold and bitterness and gloominess, will remember her. She wants him to remember her, to appreciate her and realize how precious she is and how important he was to her. She wants him to remember that she really has provided him with a happier dwelling, and that they were happy together because she was an obedient, loving wife. This wife is still in love with her husband, and she is still hoping that he will someday realize that he has mistaken her. She needs him back because she cannot think of anyone and she cannot be with anyone else. She doesn't know if he is still alive or he has died in battle or at sea, but at least she wishes him to suffer, and maybe this will give her some comfort. Maybe through his pain some favor will be rendered he will appreciate and remember. By the end of the poem, this female curses herself because she cannot forget, and because she will keep waiting and be always hoping for him to return. She is cursing herself because she has loved someone who has abandoned her, and she is suffering because she knows that he decided to go away and forget about her. She is cursing and wishing harm and more pain to herself and to everyone who is doing the same, loving someone and waiting for them in longing. This second poem is then experiencing great affections, true feelings of love, female loving her husband, missing her husband and wishing him to return, a woman with perplexed feelings. She doesn't know if she still loves him, or now she hates him because he has gone and left her suffering alone in the woods. She feels strange both spiritually and mentally, and both spiritually and physically. For her, this man is everything. He is her life, he is her belonging, he is her dwelling. Him being missing is a missing piece. With him, her heart is missing. The joy of life is missing. She needs him back in order to be able to survive and to revive again. She needs to breathe love again and to feel loved once more. This female will always remember, awaits for long gone Lord that may never come back. These two poems are to a larger extent interrelated. You may wonder about what kind of interconnection can we draw between a dying, a repenting seafarer and a lamenting, yearning wife. There is a kind of intertextuality between these two stories, as if the first is referring to the second one, and vice versa. The second one is referring to the first one. In the first poem, we see a man wandering at sea, alone, unable to think about anything except for the pain, hunger, and loneliness. A man who has lost everything: friends, family, and glory. And because he is alone at sea, he now remembers how life has passed him by as a young man. He is trying to collect memories and remember friends, lords, and family. Now that he is alone, he realizes that nothing lasts forever, and that His life is fading. Now he decides to return to God, asking and praying for forgiveness. The Seafarer started his poem by depicting mundane pleasures and glories, and then he transferred in emotions into being tiresome and lonely. Nothing now makes sense for him. Everything physical is worthless. Heaven is what he wishes for, and he wishes to be rewarded with. Nothing materialistic is of importance now. Maybe even his wife is forgotten. He is wretched, cold, and afraid at sea, stripped of love and of all emotions. The woman, on the other hand, is still waiting, wishing for this long-gone husband to return, and to suffer sometimes. Maybe it would be only through sufferance that he will come back. We don't see a reference to the religious culture in the second poem, except in the way Adam, peace be upon him, was longing for a female. So this woman here is still steeped in the physical world. She's describing her need to be loved and to feel love again. She's young, beautiful, and passionate about life. And that's why she wants her husband back. Unfortunately, he is dying. He cannot remember her now. And even if he does, she's away from him. She makes no sense. These two poems were both found in the Exeter book. They were told by anonymous Scots. We don't know who recited them, but at least we know why. These two poems, like many other poems from the Old English era, characterize the Anglo-Saxon life of a Germanic human being who loved, enjoyed, and cried over life sometimes, as if it is like telling us that in spite of all the tribal glory, kinship, bonding, all the legends about monsters and heroes, there were individuals whose life mattered, and their feelings were, and still are, worth noting, because they eventually teach us always about ourselves and help us to always understand ourselves better via deciphering the diverse layers of meaning in stories. This is all for now. I hope you find this useful and easy to comprehend, inshallah. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below, or contact me on my email that is already available to you. Thank you.